Did you ever experience that you had a dream, you were so excited, you had a vision, but in the same time, you were just freaked out because it was out of your comfort zone? How you can manage situation like this? I'm going to invite my co-host. It's Ali, life coach and expert on anything related to mindset and changes and transformation. Welcome, Ali.
Hi.
I can now try your abilities in life coaching because I'm currently in a situation when I had a dream like to travel. It was always my dream. I did some travels, but now I feel like this is my soul guidance, but it's so like I'm so freaked out because it's like the journey in my car through the Europe to the UK, even to London, and they are driving on the wrong side of the road. And so it's going to be so challenging. I'm excited about it, but in the same time, it's how I can navigate that. I'm freaked out.
Well, I think it really comes down to your dream versus the action that you're taking. So, more than likely, you find the result of the action inspiring. That's why it's exciting. That's why you're moving forward. But when it comes down to the specifics and trying to learn how to navigate, say, driving on the opposite side of the road, that's where the contention or resistance comes up. So, it's more about kind of bringing yourself into a state of relaxation where you're like, okay, well, I'm more likely actually to make a mistake when I'm stressed out. So I need to figure out how to get myself into alignment with the subject and get my emotions in order, because your emotions are essentially indicating to you that you're not thinking thoughts that are beneficial to you. So when you start to go with, okay, well, driving on the other side of the road isn't so difficult because all the other cars are going the same way. I'm just going to be able to follow the stream. That's likely going to ease things. Whereas if you're thinking about like, they drive on the opposite side of the road, I don't know how to do that. That's totally against everything I know. What's going to happen? You're likely going to wind up on the opposite side of the road facing oncoming traffic. So letting go of the stress is actually one of the best things you can do. And I'd say there's a breathing technique that I generally like to utilize when I'm stressed out, and I call it the two breath method. The first breath that you utilize is you breathe in really, really quickly, like as fast as you can, and breathe out really slowly. And that basically stops your brain from over analyzing and stops your brain from thinking. So it's the all stop or the reset button, is kind of how I describe it. And then you follow that up with a really slow intake of breath that you then expel as quickly as possible. And that gets rid of the stress and lowers your cortisol levels. So it's a pretty powerful combination. And when you do that, it's amazing how much better you feel. Like just that one thing, or those two things, that one process is going to make a huge difference in how you feel. Is crazy powerful. It's amazing. Like I know a lot of people talk about breathing meditations and stuff, which can be helpful, but this is so fast and so easy that I'm just like, do this and then try something else, because this will likely set you up for success in whatever else you're going to try.
Yeah, yeah. This is great advice. Thank you. Or what would you suggest when it feels so overwhelming because there's so many things how I can think
Yeah.
about everything?
Yeah, you're getting wrapped up in the details again. So it's basically the same basic premise, although the situation's a little bit different. So I would say it's mostly just about finding the beliefs you already have about the situation that are positive, that can lead to a positive emotional state. Now I know that this is kind of like the law of attraction concept that people talk about, and a lot of people think that the law of attraction is kind of woo woo, and they're like, I don't know about that thing. Really, all the law of attraction is setting your brain up for success. So the concept of visualization, for example, is you're practicing what you're going to do later. And the more you practice it before you get into the situation, the more likely you are to react in that way. So it's kind of like I saw this post on Facebook the other day where they're like, when you have a cup of coffee and somebody bumps into you and you spill it, you get asked the question, well, why did you spill the coffee? And a lot of people are like, well, because they hit me. And that's not actually the case. You spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. If you had tea, you would have spilled the tea instead. So life has a way of jostling us up, and what spills out is what we have in our cup when we get jostled. So visualization is a way of filling your cup up with positive reactions so that when you're jostled or when the stress hits, you react in the way that you want to react. So you're pre-gaming, you're pre-planning your reactions. And when you get into the situation that's actually causing you the stress, you'll then know what to do and how to react. So when it comes to figuring out how to get everything together and ensuring that you have everything in place, the first thought I personally would start with is what I forget, I can buy if I need it. And that's a very comforting thought where it's like, okay, I don't have to have everything perfect. I can get something if I still need it. We have a world where that's possible. So if I forgot my formal wear, then I can go out to a store and buy it. Now, that's not necessarily something I want to do because more expensive, but that is something I could do if I needed to do it. And then, of course, depending on your confidence level, you could be like, well, I can rock any room whatsoever if that's something you already believe in, no matter what I'm wearing. So, using the thoughts that you already believe about the situation or about yourself to pregame before you enter that stressful situation is likely going to set you up for success, no matter what could go wrong. Because we all know things can go wrong. We just have to set ourselves up to react positively.
Yeah, and this is, I'm just talking about my example because it's where I am right now, but this applies to any situation in life. If you find yourself like stressed out about something, so you can still use these methods. And actually, as you are talking about it, like I'm already like feel calm down because yeah, of course I did that before and I survived, and it's like okay, it will be uncomfortable, but that's the point, it's the adventure. That's why I'm doing these crazy things, because of that adrenaline, and this excitement of new things. And yeah, so
Well, and
I
if it really
definitely
gets
did
that
that.
bad, you can go with that basic question of, will this kill me? And more than likely, the answer is no. And if it's not going to kill you, then you know you can handle it because you're like, well, I've survived thus far.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
can be your starting
definitely.
place for the positive thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. And what I also realize, like sometimes I struggle to find balance between plan everything out and like, just let it flow and let, I don't know, my intuition guide me. How to find balance. And
Right. And
this
that's going
is
to depend on each individual based upon, what you need in order to feel comfortable. I'm somebody who doesn't really like lists. So I don't necessarily write down a list and like check mark it when I'm packing my things. But that is a great way to actually decrease the stress level because then you're thinking about everything you need and then you're able to cross it off as you pack it into things. And then when you get into the car to drive, some people are very, very stressed out about driving and they're worried about where they're going. So then that one's more about, like, if I take a wrong turn, what do I do? Well, you turn around and you go back to the planned route, or you follow the GPS's rerouted system, or you give yourself enough time to where you can make mistakes and turn around if need be. Because the less time you have to fix errors, the more stressed you're going to be. And the more time you spend thinking about what you need to do versus like writing it down so that you don't have it in your brain anymore, the more stressed you're going to be. So while I'm not necessarily somebody who likes to write things down and create a list, it is actually really helpful in getting rid of stress because you're getting it out of your brain onto something tangible that you can look at.
yeah, and this is also like very important to decrease the stress level, like, and I had to train myself to do that because it could be stressful, in traffic, and now what, where should I go or something. And now I realize, like, okay, I can, if I will take the wrong direction, yeah, that's exactly what I can do. I will just find another way, or just I will wait until navigation will find another way, and that's it. And I will not die. I can like take the wrong direction and nothing really happen.
Right.
When
We have a trip
yeah.
coming up in early July down to Reno, Nevada. So for us, it's like a 10-hour drive, I think. And we've
Wow.
been there before, so it's less stressful. But I remember a time where my sisters and I went to Mount St. Helens, or tried to, and went totally the wrong direction. And my sister was driving and she was totally stressed out. And then I took over, and it was a much more pleasant drive from there because I'm very confident in my driving skills and I don't tend to have a lot of stress around driving. So you can see how the thoughts and the perspectives and the pre-gaming that you've done can play out, where, you know, she has a very different mentality around driving than I do, but that's not because she's less skilled or talented in driving. She's still capable. She doesn't get into accidents very often either. And, you know, I literally took my driving and went and made a career out of it, where I went into semi truck driving for a couple of years. So, very, very different approaches. And yet it's the same skill, it's the same ability. And we approach it 100% differently. So, yeah, planning for a trip can be more stressful to one person than to another. And everybody has something that they're stressed about. So you definitely have to do that pre-gaming. You have to be like, okay, who do I want to be in this scenario? And then like program yourself to react that way. And it's not necessarily easy. I know there are times where I actually want to be stressed. And I can literally think about, like, why am I holding on to this anger? Why am I holding on to this stress? And the answer that comes back is, I want to feel this way. So I know people are like, negative emotions are so horrible. Sometimes you want and need to feel them. Your body just for some reason wants that hormone. So know why you're feeling that way too, because sometimes you actually want to, and that's okay.
Yeah, but the good news is that you can like train yourself and just practice, and you will improve your like how you react in stressful situations
In
because
every stressful situation, in
yeah,
fact. Yeah, the
never,
more you
yeah, yeah.
practice, yeah. My husband and I, we've been working to start a business, and one of the things they recommend is going out and talking to people one on one, you know, developing customer bases just off of having conversations. And his emotional reaction and my emotional reaction are very different, again, like me and my sister, where he deals more with the I'm scared to talk to people, and I'm more I don't want to talk to people. So it's more begrudging, because I've had a lot of negative experiences with people where I'm like, that was a really useless conversation. That was a really boring conversation. And I notice that I'm setting myself up by thinking those thoughts. So you have to
Mhm.
work to catch those thoughts as they come up, or you can intentionally start to program them in. But generally speaking, I'm lazy, so I don't want to do that. So instead, you have to catch the thought when it comes up and then be like, is that true? Is that who I want to be? Is that how I want to react? And if that's not who I want to be, if that's not how I want to react, who do I want to be instead? And that question, who do I want to be, is probably the most powerful question anybody can ask, because it will guide you down the path that you want to follow.
Yeah. And another thing about dealing with stressful situation, it's about the level of like how difficult it is. And so you can prepare, get a little bit out of the comfort zone and train this, and then you are ready to do next step. You know, you try this small thing, oh, I survived, oh, and it's like you can feel the success, like, oh yes, that was good, I can go next time, I will go farther. And
Right, and you
yeah.
can definitely set smaller goalposts, or shorter goalposts, where you view success as something lesser than the ultimate goal, and then you have a series of goals to accomplish, which builds your self confidence. If you can do that, I know that setting those goals and feeling like they're actually an accomplishment can be a bit of a challenge. But if you can do that, it will definitely build your sense of accomplishment. And then as that happens, as you become more capable and feel more confident, you then have less stress in any new situation. But anytime that you have something new pop up, or something new that you're trying, expect to mess up somewhere. I think that's something that a lot of people try to avoid, where they're like, well, I can't mess up. It's horrible. Like, people will judge me, people will laugh, um, people will call me a failure, whatever that judgment thought is. It's not realistic. You're doing something new, you are going to mess up. It is to be expected. Everybody understands. So there's this story of a little kid who is running a race. And I think it's a poem, actually. But basically, the kid wants to win. He wants to prove his, or make his dad proud, so on and so forth. So as the gunshot goes off and they start the race, all the kids start running. And then in his excitement, his feet move faster than his brain, and he trips and he falls down. So then he looks up into the stands and he sees his dad, and his dad's basically, just looking at him anxiously, like, get up and run. So the kid decides to get back up and run. And then he starts running a little bit. He sees all these kids in front of him, gets in his head again, and falls over again. And then looks over at his dad and he's like, well, there's no way I'm going to catch up now. I might as well quit. But then he can see his father's face where he's like, no, you need to get up. You need to run the race. You need to win. So he gets back up again, runs a little bit further, and falls a third time. And at this point, he's so dejected, he's so crestfallen, and the desire to just be done is so intense that he just wants to lay down on the ground and not do anything else. But he knows that his father expects him to finish the race. And he's like, fine, I probably am not going to win, but I can still finish. So he stands back up and he finishes the race. And the kid who comes in first, he gets a really loud applause. Everybody's excited, that kid won. But when the last kid, who fell down 3 times, finishes the race, the level of applause he gets is almost double the first place winner, because he faced adversity and overcame it. And everybody admires that more, where you kept going even when the cards were down, even when you didn't have the chips to play, whatever, you kept pushing forward. And that, to pretty much everybody, is more admirable than being the best. So don't worry so much about failure. Be the kid who gets up and runs even when he knows he can't win, because at least he can get to the finish line and show everybody that he is at least capable of following through.
Yeah, and mostly in life situations, maybe we put like too much importance to the goal and to the success or something. But in many situations, it's like it didn't go as expected, but I can go with it, I can live with it, I can start over or just do something else. Great perspective is like, look at the situation. Will you remember that after 5 years or something? Is this really important in your life, or is you are attached too much to the result when
Yeah, I definitely
actually.
think looking at the bigger picture is definitely helpful. If you can remove yourself, I think Alex Hormozy actually does a good job of this, where he's like, sometimes when I'm having an argument with my wife, I just think about how small we are compared to the size of the planet. And if you can zoom your perspective out that far, you start to realize that your problems are really not that significant, because you're one tiny human on this huge planet. And I think that's often something that's fascinating about humans in general, is we're just so powerful. And that's where the whole concept of global warming and things like that comes in, where people are like, well, humans are this horrible creature and we're doing all these horrible things. And I'm like, we don't even know right now what's causing what. Now, it definitely makes sense for us to do what we can to preserve the resources that we have and to take care of the planet that we live on. But all things considered, I think it's really kind of silly to be like, humans are this all powerful being, because we're so tiny. We are so small, and the amount of influence we have is probably not as great as we think that it is. Because if you look at the size of humanity versus the size of the planet, we're ants. We're very small. And if you look at the size of the planet compared to the size of the universe, we basically don't exist. So if you look at the big picture, all of these little problems we face, they probably aren't all that important, all things considered. But you do still have to live your life, so they have to matter to you at the very least, and you still should do the best that you can.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on this, like really, like so many situation in daily life is like, yeah, will you care in few years about it? And mostly the answer is no. Like so many useless, fights or just conflicts.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that's interesting too, is that we do tend to take our arguments with our family and friends, and we take them very, very personally. And somebody could have a ruined relationship for years because they're continuing to hold on to a grudge. And the question is that really worth it? Is that subject so important that it's worth sacrificing a long term relationship with somebody you genuinely care about? And I'd say no, usually it isn't. So I think for me, I inherently knew this after we had somebody die that was really close to me. So after that point, I was like, there's nothing worth sacrificing your relationship over. So grudges have never been a part of my life. But I definitely know people who are very much into holding grudges, and they'll do it for years and generations and maybe never speak to those people again in their lifetime. And I'm like, is that really worth it? That was somebody you genuinely cared about. Whatever the argument was based on, it probably doesn't really matter. You can express your hurt, you can express your anger, and you can say, I expect to be treated in this way. And if they choose not to treat you that way, yeah, it makes sense to not associate with them because they have no intention of actually having a positive relationship with you. But if they are genuinely a good person, you can usually get past whatever.
Yeah. So we were talking about like how to release stress or just lower the in intensity of the stress. And do you have something, some like one more advice about this, how to handle stressful situations, or some practical tip at the end of this interview?
I mean, I would definitely say keep in mind that more than likely your perspective is wrong in some fashion, at the very least. So we often think we understand a situation fully when we don't. And I have a really good example of this. I had an argument with my husband a little while ago, and it was a very, very intense argument where, most people would probably break up over it, type of argument. And that ruined my whole next day. But I remember, because I wasn't willing to sacrifice that relationship, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice the end goal of a healthy relationship, I decided I needed to confront it right then and there. And so we talked about it for a couple of hours. And then as we started discussing it, I started to understand his perspective better and what he meant by what he said. And he understood what I meant more, and what I did, as a result of our interaction, kind of thing. And at the end of it, I felt totally dumb, where I was like, wow, my whole day was ruined based on this thing, which is not even a factor anymore. Like, there was no emotional trauma around it whatsoever. But that was only able to happen because I was willing to understand and listen to his perspective. That never would have happened if I thought I was 100% right. And generally speaking, that's where people come at situations from. It's from this perspective of, I'm 100% right and I know everything about it, and extrapolate that out as you will. But that's never the case. Pretty much never the case, because the amount we know about the world is probably less than 10% of what is out there to know. And what we know about other people's actions is also quite minimal, because we filter everything through our own perspective and we assume they act in the same way that we do when they don't. So understand that you don't know everything. You don't know exactly how things are going to play out. And so you have to just breathe in and be open to whatever else is going to come your way, because ultimately that openness prepares you to handle pretty much everything.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for, yeah, for this conversation. Oh, now I feel so relaxed. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, and see you by the next conversation. Bye.
Yep. Bye.